I'm very happy to open this second day of our conference with a talk by Alena Strohmaier, who unfortunately can't join us in person, but still can be here via Zoom. Alena will hold the professorship for film studies at the University of Paderborn in the next semester, and congratulations again for that. She is, or was before, the scientific project leader of the research project Cinematic Appropriation Processes of Protest Videos from the Middle East and North Africa. And before that, she worked as scientific coordinator of the research network Reconfigurations, History, Memory, and Transformation Processes in the Middle East and North Africa. Both was located at the Philipps-Universität in Marburg, and funded by the German Federal Ministry for Education and Research. Apart from that, she's also the initiator and editor of the Open Media Studies blog that you can also all visit. I think maybe in German mostly, but I think it's maybe it's mixed. Mixed. So visit the Open Media Studies blog. Alena will be talking about the pixelation of images in previous and current protests in Iran, and she will highlight what I tried to call for this introduction a performative double character of pixelization as a working process that, on the one hand, conceals while thereby emphasizing the importance of the concealed. And with this, thank you for joining us virtually. And so Alena's talk is Zan Zindagi Azadi, Women, Life, Freedom, the chant of the Iranian movement, pixelated images and the women's rights movement in Iran. And with this, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, but also for the invitation and the opportunity to present my research here today. It is a special endeavor for me because I not only have a scientific interest in the current protests in Iran, but also a biographical one, since I'm half Iranian myself. And so in a world permeated by a ceaseless stream of images moving through the infrastructure of digital networks, be it fiber optic links, radio waves from Wi-Fi transmissions, radio frequencies from cellular networks, or signals from satellite communications, the question of high and low resolution of images and screens is still of great importance. The different degrees of resolution measure the specific technical characteristics of the sensors of digital cameras, the encoding formats of the files, and those of the display and playback devices. But far from being just a way to measure the amount of information and detail contained in any digital file before it is displayed on a screen, the distinction between high and low resolution images also has aesthetic, epistemological, economic, and political dimensions. Aesthetically, because the presence or absence of detail in an image directly affects the quality of our sensory experience, be it visual as well as auditory. Epistemological, since high or low resolution directly conditions the forms of knowledge we access and the values and connotations we associate with them. Economically, as high and low resolutions play a fundamental role in the industrial dynamics that determine technological development. An evolution that for several decades has been characterized by an ever faster race to higher degrees of image and sound resolution. So that today's high resolution inevitably tends to become tomorrow's low resolution. Political, finally, because everything that comes into play in regulating the distinction between visible and invisible, audible and inaudible, everything that contributes to what might be called with Rancière le partage du sensible, always has a political value. In this context, we should not forget the fact that the production of high-definition images is often relocated to countries with lower labor costs. In this context, the question of, on the one hand, the technological processes of production and circulation of digital images, and on the other hand, the nature of the labor involved, a labor that is often invisible, becomes crucial. I do not understand images as isolated objects, but also always in relation to, on the one hand, the experience they evoke in their viewers, an experience often framed by devices, which in turn may be of high and or low resolution, and on the other hand, the context and environments, be it physical, technical, cultural, or artistic, in which images are produced and circulate. So in today's presentation, I would like to focus more specifically on the image cell, the pixel. Pixel refers to individual color values of a digital raster graphic, as well as to the surface elements necessary to capture or display a color value on a screen with raster control. Pixelation of images refers to a practice that reduces the sharpness of an image completely or partially in order to make what is depicted in it invisible or less visible. When part of an image is pixelated, the image section is divided into small squares. The average color of each square is determined and the squares are colored. Historically, digital pixel images are linked to the entire history of dot or halftone images. They stand alongside mosaic techniques, certain types of weaving, from the punch card of the jacquard loom to petit point, painterly styles such as neo-impressionist pointillism, or printing techniques such as halftone and bandé printing. They are thus part of a genealogical lineage that extends to the light dots of CRT screens and fixed pixel matrix monitors, such as plasma screens, liquid crystal screens, displays, LED screens, and projectors. As technological progress is based on planned obsolescence, screens are reaching higher and higher levels of resolution, from standard definition to high definition to full high definition and ultra high definition, 4K or 8K. The more or less high resolution of an image or a digital display device can be interpreted as a sign of its temporal status, a visible trace of its belonging to a certain phase in the history of digital visual technologies. One can thus change the temporal or historical connotations of an image by changing its resolution, as it's possible today with filters on social media like Instagram, TikTok, etc. But given the trend toward ever higher resolution images, cameras and screens promoted by industry, marketing, and advertising, where high resolution is often associated with values such as optical precision, technical performance, and sensory intensity, how can the survival of blurring and pixels be explained? So my main question here is where, especially in the context of protests and wars, are the values and connotations of realism, authenticity, evidence, reliability, and witnessing to be located on the side of the high or the low resolution? So this brings me to the current protests in Iran. They began in September 2022 after the death by police violence of Mahsa Amini. She had been arrested by Islamic morality police because her headscarf did not fit properly. The protests are directed against both the theocratic regime in Iran and the living conditions dictated by the regime, especially the Islamic dress code. As a sign of solidarity with Amini and in protest against the women's rights situation in Iran, demonstrators deliberately violated the dress code by removing their headscarves or cutting their hair in public. So here, first example is the example of Nasid Samsai, an Iranian woman living in Turkey who cut off her ponytail during a protest outside of the Iranian consulate in Istanbul on September 21st, 2022. Other examples can be found on social media, where Iranian women uploaded videos of themselves carrying out the protests at home. So far, so connectable to current video activism practices and what the art historian Kerstin Shankweiler calls selfie protests. A small Google search yields a multitude of these images and videos, and also the usual images of crowded streets and squares that we already saw in 2009 during the Green Movement in Iran. This time, however, on my cousin's Instagram channel, actually, I also come across an unprecedented type of image. It shows a young woman without a headscarf holding a stone in her right hand and a banner in her left. And her face is pixelated. Her posture is erect and strong, almost militant. The banner held high, the stone ready to be thrown. There have been similar images during the Green Movement in 2009, but the pixelation of the face is new. It corresponds with the black and white checkered shirt of the young woman, so quite obviously, apart from her anonymization and security, this was also an aesthetic endeavor. The same was applied to a video, as we can see in this example I will show. And yeah, you may see that in the beginning there are no pixels, and then it gets pixelated. One way of making things unrecognizable is pixelation. Another is blurring. So here we see the face of a woman that clearly has been blurred, and in the following video, the filter has been applied whilst filming. So we see how the top of the image, the sky, the trees, and the buildings are sharp, while the people and faces are blurred. And what is really interesting to me, or what I wanted also to highlight in showing these different examples, especially the two videos, is that pixelation is a mode applied to the image after it has been taken. So, you know, we can see the not pixelated part, and then it becomes pixelated. So it has been kind of in post-production, if you want to say. While the blurring can be applied already while the image or video is taken. So it makes a difference, I would say, in the modes of production, and also the intention maybe behind it. So it makes a difference if I decide to do it afterwards or to do it in the moment. But in both cases, the image taker is in full control of what he or she wants to show or hide. And I think this is, especially in the context of protests, a big difference to what we had 2009 during the Green Movement, or also the following so-called Arab Spring, where now there is not only on the technical side, but also another awareness of what to film and how to show the protests. So the deliberate oscillation between high and low resolution is a property that determines the form and plasticity of digital images in general, that is, the changes that they can undergo and the visual artifacts they can create in the frame space of a screen. So controlling degrees of resolution, however, in the context of protest movements, is a way to control the conditions of visibility, to separate what is visible from what remains invisible, and to direct and focus our attention, and thus to participate in organizing the entire economy and ecology of attention and distraction that characterizes contemporary visual culture. And what I think is particularly interesting in this last video is that the high and the low resolution are there at the same time. So despite, like, in contrast to the pixelation where then the whole thing is pixelated, here we have this oscillation between the high and the low resolution, and it's an, well, deliberate or not deliberate, also aesthetic choice to show, okay, there are things you could see, but you know, I decide where the blurring starts and stops. So in this economy and ecology of attention, high and low resolution are not only those of images and screens, but also of the context. So the spaces, the environments, the milieux that surround them and condition their reception. And what is also particularly interesting in the videos is that the sound is very clear, right? Like there is no effects on the sound. It's purely on the visual side. So in other words, high and low resolution are properties not only of the signal, but also of the experience of the signal and of the sensory environment, or the sensorium in which that experience takes place and which creates shared affects. So I think it's really important to also focus, or not to forget, the sound, or to think about, you know, watching these with sound, because it's a whole other dimension of what the oscillation between high and low resolution makes here in this video. So when I talk about shared affects, or affect is understood here as a highly dynamic and also relational event that is less to be located in actors than between them. So accordingly, affects are not conceived as properties or states of individuals, but rather arise only through exchange between bodies. And here I not only mean the bodies in the protest, in the video, but also between us viewers and the videos or images. So the images that were created in agitated and sometimes also life-threatening situations, here, but also during the Green Movement in 2009, they are blurred and shaky, and especially in 2009, they were blurred and shaky, not deliberately, so it had to do with the situation, with running away, with being threatened, but also with the technological devices of the time. And at that time, precisely because of this shakiness and blurriness, these images, 2009, were reproduced as testimonies of authenticity. So it was a big thing to have them as a low resolution, or as a not so well filmed image, because it testified of, you know, they were in the middle of the protests. But my question here is now, so what does the pixelation in the current examples testify to? So it's not about maybe, I don't know, the authenticity or the testimony of I'm in the middle of something. So yeah, maybe that's something also for the discussion, this difference in pixelation and blurring and what it testifies to. But as old as these discussions about the authenticity of images are, I think in the course of the current protests in Iran, they seem to be posed anew, above all, because social media offer new spaces of possibility to follow the everyday life of others and to share one's own. I mean, this is not really new as a definition, but the theoretical concepts attached to such discussions carry along with them long traditional ontologies and presumed modes of action of images, which as such dominantly accompany the discussions about digital media, new media, social media, or everyday media. So stubbornly persisting are the supposedly long outdated beliefs about the image as only a secondary reality, about the lost believed status of a real reality. And despite obsolescence, however, it seems never trivial or irrelevant, even causally comprehensible that the central onto and epistemological questions about the inherent life or the persistence of images, about their aesthetics and modes of action arise again and again, especially in the context of popular uprisings. In particular, the fact that the omnipresence and omni-use of images can no longer be denied, like from our everyday lives also. And it shows how much an engagement with everyday media must also mean an engagement with the most fundamental notions of understanding about media, images, and art. The videos and images of Iranian women cutting their hair they do not act alone. So they're not individual aesthetic choices or technical premises. They're embedded in complex processes of entanglement that operate between censorship practices and algorithmicity, monetarization and identity politics, and creating a field of interlocking logics of production, reception, and distribution. So I think this is important in terms of also the loops and the repetitions of these kind of images that put away the individuality, not of the act, but of the image, because the Google search of women cutting their hair in Iran gives you a lot of the same kind of images. So yeah, also something maybe to discuss in the later. So in this context, pixelation, or like I understand pixelation as an act that conceals, as the viewer of an image content is prevented or prohibited, but at the same time, it always underscores the significance of the pixelated area or the blurred area, bringing it back into focus, especially in the last video I showed the image that is still here, because of this high and low at the same time, or the high definition and the blurring at the same time, and the moving, there is always this, will it move down enough so I can take a glimpse of who the people are? So there is always this kind of play with the attention or the focus of the blurred image, or the blurred part in this case. So pixelation or blurring is therefore always to be understood performatively. So I understand it performatively because it stands in a relational, affective relationship to its viewers. So, so while for Hito Steil, the rich images are to the poor images what, well, the bourgeoisie would be to the proletariat, I suggest a more complex definition. So both high and low resolution images add value that can be used to circulate political messages. And the degree of resolution and the extent of circulation are not inversely proportional phenomena. On the contrary, they lead to different solutions and also to different image policies. And I'm especially interested in images that mix both. Many approaches illuminate how media often work not with the contrast between high and low resolution, but with their superimposition. And this is especially true for film, a high resolution medium that also accommodates low resolution images, as in compilation films, found footage film, secondhand film, etc. And in this sense, to conclude, or I would conclude by arguing for an analysis of hybrid configurations that would reveal how high and low resolution define each other, and often even interpenetrate each other. Because I think the examples clearly show how functional logics of media, art, and images intertwine, how ideologies, popular cultures, habits and demands, stereotypes and modes of use, technologies, and socially influence how images and videos are created, but also how they are used. So with that, I would leave it to that, and I'm very interested in the discussion and your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Keep on clapping. Okay. Thank you very much, Alena.